I'm Kayte Lewis from Voice Lawyers, and this is Voice in the Crowd, the podcast for people, not lawyers. It's about demystifying the law, speaking in plain English, and sharing practical insights into how the legal system really works in everyday life. Each episode draws on real stories and experiences, the good, the bad, and the confusing. If you feel overwhelmed or confused by the law, or you're just interested in our stories, this podcast is for you. Voice in the Crowd, where the law meets real people.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for our very first episode of the podcast Voice in the Crowd. Today, as our special guest, we have Louise Chiu. Louise is a chartered accountant and mortgage mentor with over 25 years in finance. She's the founder of Mum's Got Millions, which is a great name for a business. And she helps women and families build confidence with money to create a pattern that works for them. She likes to give practical financial education and support, and today she's here to share some of those tips with us because, as we know, many of our clients and friends are going through similar situations, and she's here to share that with us today. Thank you for joining us, Louise.
Thank you, Katie. It's an honor being on as the first guest in your podcast, and congratulations on Voice of the Crowd.
Thank you very much. I have done some looking into you, apart from the time that we've spent together in the last 12 months in various groups that we've been a part of. And you are a very big supporter of women having financial literacy.
Yeah, that's right. So, financial literacy is so important. If you look back at history, even in the last 10, 20 years, probably only about 60% of men are good or claim to be good with numbers. But for women, the statistics are actually a bit worse. Only about 40% can answer 5 to 7 financial literacy questions correctly. So it's quite shocking, you would think with a lot of education, women are being educated, getting university degrees, that financial education may come a bit more naturally, but it is not. It really is something to educate yourself on. So for me, having women to really understand numbers, understand money is so important.
So what are these financial literacy questions? What are some of the questions that we should be able to answer?
Yeah, so if you even understand income, what is income, right? A lot of people get confused, what exactly is an income? Maybe a salary is an income. But yeah, whether investment, once you go down the investment route, people get really confused. The interest rates, economic cycles, there are a few basic questions under the OECD. And yeah, it's just interesting that a lot of people don't really understand even compound interest rates, what it exactly means. So if you borrow $100 and the interest of 10%, it's not $10, but with the compounding, you're probably paying about $11 to $12. So there's all these little things that kind of add up, and people just don't really get the basics right. And people are just fearful of the concept of money in general.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I've found.
So you mentioned the OECD. So that's a world governing body. And so they say that we should understand these certain aspects of finances. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's just a basic test of what financial literacy is about. There are certain questions that, they have got reports of a lot of things, right? So financial literacy is just one of the topics that they've covered in a lot of the statistics. ABS publish a lot of statistics on a lot of other things as well.
Wow. And so where does Australia rate on this? You're saying women rate quite poorly. Is that all women or Australian women? Or?
I think I can't remember exactly which studies I was looking at, but I think there were some reports done by certain universities as well. I remember reading some reports and it was pretty interesting. It's pretty similar to, I guess, globally, because Australia is a first world country, right? So about 60% of men better or seem to be better with numbers, but only about 40% of women seem to be,
financial.
That's right.
Okay, that's interesting. So Louise, you've said that money doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can be simple, confident, and life-changing. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's really just understanding what money is about. Right. Money is a tool. It's something to help you. So I think the first step really is to understand your goals, what you are really after. Does making more money or having more money just make you happy? I think that's a very basic question, right? A lot of people just keep chasing for more money. And if you work in a job or in a business, having more money definitely would mean more sacrifices initially. So even working out what your money goals are, what you actually can use your money for, and how to grow it, basic understanding of your needs, how money can actually help you build the life that you want. I think that's the important bit. So it doesn't have to be complicated. A lot of people, like I said, just focus on, money is just too hard. I'm not good at math in school. And they equate being not good with math to be not good with money.
Okay.
I think that's a basic misconception from the start.
Right.
Yeah. Because a lot of things are covered in math, there are a lot of formulas, calculations, but money is like, if you can count from 1 to 100, if you can use a calculator,
Yep.
to me, you can't count money, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess this is what's led you to start Mum's Got Millions?
Yeah, that's right. So my other business as well is mortgage broking. So I do help clients, get finance ready if they want to buy a property or refinance to get equity out to do other investments and purchase other properties. So I do realize that a lot of people, even starting out, like, I just don't have the capacity to save for a deposit. Then I ask them, so what are you spending your money on, right? We go down to, their income, their expenses, then you realize that, okay.
Yeah, that's a touchy one, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
there's been plenty around that, particularly with younger people and, the avocado on toast comments that have been made, which I'm not advocating for at all, but it's certainly, people get quite sensitive when you start looking at what they're spending their money on.
Yeah, that's right. So, it really doesn't have to be overwhelming. I think that's the first thing I tell my clients. And it's really not about math. It's really understanding your behaviors, your goals, and what exactly you want to achieve. So like I said before, it's not about, how much money you're earning. If you can earn the money, but you're not keeping it, that defeats the whole purpose, right? And I've shared in some of my speeches as well. Like, if you earn $100, but you're spending 105, you're in a -5. You have a -5. So that means you are overspending. So if you continue that trend, then you're going to end up with no money or in debt. And that's bad debt, really.
Yes. Right. You specifically, I mean, it's Mum's Got Millions, and you've said that your mission is to help women and families create a life that works. So why are you particularly honing in on the women to help them create a life that works?
Yeah, I've looked at, helping my clients in talking to a lot of women out there and educated women who have university degrees, right? Even our generation and the younger generation, a lot of them are actually educated. But yet they tell me the same thing. Oh, I'm not good with money, or my husband looks after it, or, it's just too hard. I'm like, why? I mean, you are educated. You have done hard math as well as the boys. So it's really that, from talking with people, then I'm like, yeah, so it's really a mental block that people have that, I'm just not good with money. Or like, in my parents, dad handles everything. Mom just maybe manage the grocery budget.
Right.
So, it becomes like, oh, okay, yep, if I get married or if I have a partner, then my partner will just look after things. I don't have to do anything. So it's really that, mindset change that needs to happen.
And is that surprising to you, given that obviously you've mentioned, we've got highly educated women, just as educated as the boys are. And, why is there still that deference, do you think?
It's firstly that mindset issue. If it's something that, in your family, it's happened that way, you kind of unconsciously think that, it will happen the same way. And that, just believe that, women need to do certain things while men, go out to earn the money, bring home the bacon thing. But in, our current households, it's kind of quite an equal share. But obviously when the woman goes on parental leave, but the government is good, right? They're giving parental leave to either party to actually take that 100 days off to spend time with the kids and get paid. So, I think that's a great start. But before that, really it's unpaid parental leave. And normally, right, or usually the wife takes it.
And we know that that's made a really big gender gap in
Yeah, that's
terms
right.
of where financial well-being of each party lies, because we know, because in family law we often try to equalize or bridge that gap somewhat, but we'll come to that in a minute. I mean, I think this is really interesting that you're saying that this is what you're seeing, and you're not telling me that it's tied to any particular cultural background or similar. For me, I grew up with a single mum, so I don't have that same experience that you're talking about where dad looked after the money. That didn't happen. That wasn't part of my upbringing at all. So I find that interesting that that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, so different groups of clients. So, I mean, I'm from a single parent household as well. So mom obviously looks after everything, but I could see, the struggles she's been through. And so it's really about, just understanding your needs for your family, what you really want.
Yeah.
And empowering women to actually take steps to get good with money. It's not a gender thing. And there are sacrifices. Obviously, being a mom, you take time off work to look after kids, and without, that additional superannuation contribution, without working for a whole year previously, especially when there was no paid parental leave, you are really disadvantaged. That's why a lot of women in their 50s and 60s now, if they go through a separation, they realize that they don't have much super, or even if they go back to work part-time, you only get paid. Maybe like you work only 2 to 3 days out of a week. So, your wages will be much lower taking on a part-time role. And your superannuation balance will be impacted as well.
So that does put women at a distinct financial disadvantage, which I guess brings us to the situation of family law. As you know, we are family lawyers here.
Yeah.
And so we're dealing with this sort of situation all the time. And I'm often talking to my female clients and suggesting that they get some education around their finances. And I will often ask those questions, so what do you want? What do you want to do after this divorce is over in this situation? And it's often met with, a fairly blank response. It's not something that many people have actually thought about. And so I'm often looking to send people off to, financial planners or advisors, because obviously we can't give that advice, but we certainly see it, and we see people coming in and having to grapple with this type of situation, often for the first time, which I still find surprising, which was what we're just talking about. There's still that deference. I just want to clarify, just because the statistics say that men rank themselves at 60% financial literacy, which I guess is them answering the questions, and women 40, which I think is what you said before, which I find fascinating. I hadn't heard those statistics. But, we do see men that could definitely use some financial literacy, but that doesn't mean that they don't think they're good at it, whereas we'll often see women that perhaps don't think they're so good at it.
Yeah, that's right.
And that may be a big difference there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's a glass ceiling mentality, right? Like, even going for a job, I'm just generalizing here, obviously, but even men looks at a checklist like, okay, I think I've got 50% of the requirements. I will put my hand up for it. But a woman would probably say, no, I don't meet 50% of the requirements, so I won't put my hand up for it.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know whether it's inbuilt nature, but obviously there are strong women out there too. But I think it's just somehow, family behaviors, learned behaviors over time. And like you said, culturally as well. The Asian culture, women probably take a step back more in terms of career and things like that. Yeah, so a lot of things, right? Could be from family upbringing, what you're taught or not taught at home. And your friends who you hang out with, kind of determine your lifestyle, what you want to achieve, right? They said the 5 people that you're with the most, basically how you're going to probably behave as well, isn't it?
Yes, I know. Isn't that a fascinating statistic? It makes you start thinking, oh, right, well, who are these 5?
Yeah.
And just to clarify that you'll often, I think it's the statistic is that you'll earn an average of the 5 main people that you're associating with, right. Which, not my statistic, but that is a statistic out there. So it does make you kind of think about, who your friends are. Gee, some hate mail from my friends now. No. So look, that brings us to, we've talked about why it's important to understand your finances somewhat, but obviously when people come to a situation of divorce or separation, that puts a heightened need to understand because I know before, your other business is as a mortgage broker, and, I've heard you talk about how it's hard for people to get all the documents together, but it's really next level when you're looking at family law financial disclosure. And that's something that I know we find that a lot of our clients really struggle with, getting that financial disclosure together and having both sides. That's probably one of the biggest, look, I have to say, it's one of the biggest things that runs up costs in family law if one or other side either can't get their financial disclosure together or won't. That's one of the really big issues. So I know you do help some people with that as well. Tell me a bit about that from your perspective.
So what you mentioned earlier was very correct. If people think that, doing a loan application is hard, doing the Form 13, the financial disclosure document is even harder. So there are no estimates, right? You need to get actuals. And that means, downloading everything from bank statements, getting all your notices of assessments, your pay slips, and you got to break it down by, base pay, overtime commissions, and not everything is in one pay slip, right? So, that detail, that level of detail you have to go and even look at your spending, school fees, excursions, utilities, everything, right? There's just so much work involved.
And if you haven't been the person paying those...
That's right. You have no idea.
Then that can also be challenging as well, can't it?
Yeah, that's right. Because, for example, utilities or insurance is usually in one person's name. You might not actually realize, even which insurance company you're with, right, for your car. I mean, normally people look at all these policy documents when they actually need to make a claim.
Yes.
Before that, it's just direct debited somewhere or it's coming out of someone's credit card. And a lot of things you don't really know unless you're looking after it. And like you said, during a separation and divorce, there's so much going on. You want to think about the safety of your kids, their well-being. You're not even thinking of yourself in a way, right? There's so much emotional trauma and just wondering what has happened to this marriage. And to even you need to actually prepare all these financial stuff is so difficult.
And that's the thing, both parties need to do it for us to affect a financial settlement.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I understand you sometimes come along and help people. Is that right? Is that one of the things you do?
Yeah, that's right. So that's the service I provide under Mums Got Millions for people going through separation. I can help lawyers work with their clients to actually download all these important documents and do it in an order that we can actually put that into the Form 13. Because that's important, because if you don't really know what you need to spend in the future and you don't know even your income, your expenses, your liability, it's really a full financial disclosure, right? So if you don't really know all these things, how can you be sure that, whatever settlement you're getting is enough? And if you're only working part-time, for example, for women, then do you have that income that you can service a loan? Or you might need a bigger settlement payout to cover the difference and then borrow a smaller loan, get a smaller loan or mortgage to take over the remaining mortgage of your house.
And that's one of the things, I guess, that's also a little bit of a shock to people when they're going through this. Not only are they maybe not across it in the first place, and so for the first time they're having to get across all the finances where they've kind of, allowed somebody else to do that. But then you also have, and I won't say 50% because we don't know what the percentage is. Yeah. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But you only then have a percentage of what you were formerly living on to look at, how you're going to rebuild that life going forward. And, we see women and men, but we really do see clients struggle with that. Sometimes, when you're getting to settlement, go, well, look, what do you want out of this? And they really just can't tell us. And because obviously that's not an area that we can give advice in, it's really important that people going through separation go and answer those questions. What sort of life do you want? where do you want to live? And we'll often, one of the big things that we see two big trends. One is that often women who are mothers in particular don't want to let go of the family home, and there's lots of emotions around that. And yet that may financially be really, really difficult for them. And then on the other side, men never want to split the super. And so there'll be often lots of full and frank conversations around those sorts of things. So, I mean, that's kind of two stereotypes that we tend to see.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's really important to work out the life you want after that separation. Correct? Because you really don't want to be living in the past. That's really not what you want out of a separation. You want to move on. And I think it's important to think about the new goals you have, what you want to do. And I think for women especially, getting an income stream is very important. So, for them, because banks look at, your income streams, whether you can afford a loan, whether you can afford to borrow this much amount of money, right? So it's important to really work out what you want. And like you said, saving the family home might not be the best idea. I mean, it's got memories, good ones, but probably a lot of bad ones as well. Yeah. Maybe it's better sometimes to think about, maybe we can sell up and sell the house. And then, with that money you have, maybe you can still live in that suburb, but maybe get something smaller to suit your needs. So my job is not to help the clients make that decision, but it's really to work with them to find out what they want and practically show them, if you do this, you will need to earn how much to be able to service a loan. And if it doesn't work out, then, there are other options we can look at. So I think that's why I said that practical advice is really important. Like you said, as a lawyer, you can't tell them what to do. A planner can give you a plan, but even before that, right, you need to work out what your goals are, what you want to achieve, and what is really expenses that you need to sustain that same lifestyle. Or, you might have to cut back on certain things. And living alone is obviously a whole lot more expensive than, living as a couple. So there are all these little things that you need to factor in. And that's important because if you don't make the right decisions at financial settlement, it will have a huge impact for your life and probably even the next generation.
And as lawyers, we're a fairly blunt instrument in that, when you're looking at it, it's a percentage that we come down to, of what the actual pool is and who's going to get which percentage. It doesn't look at all of those other factors. And so it's really important, I think, to combine that with some extra advice, which is great that you can give this advice to our clients, Louise. It's very good. So one of the other things that I've heard you refer to is that you refer to the things we tell ourselves about money. And look, it's quite revealing when you look through people's, financial disclosure. It tells you a lot. And there's no two families that are the same. And we'll often have people that will say, we just do the normal thing. But, I'm sorry, there is no normal thing when you start looking at it. But you hear some things that you say, the things we tell ourselves. And yet, even though no two families will probably organise their finances the same, there's some similarities in the stories we tell ourselves about money, isn't there?
Yeah, because I think money, firstly, is a sensitive topic, right?
Yes.
No one really talks about it. You talk about kids, you talk about your house renovations, what you're doing on the weekend, the weather. You talk about everything, but, money is a sensitive thing, right? Even if you work in an office, the HR person would tell you, your salary is private and confidential. It's not something to be discussed. So, from many different avenues, like people are just telling you not to talk about it. Even for my mom, she's like, oh, you don't tell people how much you earn, And it's not something you want to really discuss in public. It's sensitive, but I think money itself, it's a tool. But people have so much bad connotation that attaches to it, like, sayings like money is the root of all evil. And like, what your family tells you to do or not to do. And, or you've learned it from watching your parents, how they behave, or like you think your friends are like, oh, everyone's buying a Rolex watch or, has an expensive LV bag, and you think that's the norm and that's the lifestyle you have to keep up with. So, all these learned behaviors or what you're taught impacts you on how you actually view money and how you actually handle money when you grow up, I would say.
Okay, so the psychology of money is
Yes, that's
where we're headed. So it's not just being able to add it up. So there's the whole emotional attachment and
That's right.
what you think you should have, what you think others think you should have. And so is that something that you're willing to delve into with people?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I'll tell, like I said before, you can use a calculator, you can actually work out the actual dollars and cents, but it's really that psychology of money or that mindset of money that, that will either propel people forward or actually hold a lot of people back, because that fear, like I said earlier, that, I'm just not good with money, that actually holds a lot of people back. And people don't realize it. And like you said, it's to keep up with appearances, to keep up with what's the norm. Yeah, that's, you have to dress this way because you're a lawyer, right? Everyone's got to get expensive suits, good shoes, good bags. And but ultimately, you have to work out, is that what you really want? What makes you really happy? And yeah, people just, probably a lot of people do what everyone else is doing, and with social media, right? Everyone's being marketed to. It doesn't help, right?
No, it doesn't help. And I guess that's one of the things that's, so that's a big enough issue all on its own, without combining that with a divorce or separation where you might have, it might mean, can you keep your children in the same private school? Will you have the same big house, or will you be moving to an apartment? And all of those things have a whole lot of emotion and image and that attached to them. Okay, Louise, so do you have any good news stories that you can share with us?
Yes, definitely.
That's good.
I think working with clients, like you said, a lot of people obviously go through, that financial separation, which is a huge part of the divorce proceedings. Like not knowing at all, like you've asked them what do they want, and it's a blank to them. So, working with a few clients, that when they start to see clarity, like what they want to achieve, and really move on from that financial, from that divorce, that separation, and understanding the financial needs, it's definitely harder, right? Because you're down to one income. But, having that clarity, I'm not going to be held back just because of money issues. I can move on emotionally and financially, I know how to handle my money. So working with them, using the Mums Got Millions framework, helping them through that whole financial disclosure, working out current, what they have, what they owe, and all that stuff. And then looking at, in the future, what I want to achieve and what do I have after separation, and how I can continue to grow it and use it wisely. I think that's the joy that I see from my clients. Once they start to have that clarity, start thinking for themselves and for their children as well, and not just it's never something that I should be concerned with before. I just leave it to my partner, and finding that clarity and that new confidence, really just helps them move forward and take life on step by step in a much more positive way. And I think that's really the joy. Yeah.
And look, one of the great things about that, if our clients can come to us with that type of clarity, one, it makes life so much easier for our relationship too, but it also will take a lot of the cost out of family law proceedings, because if you can't get your financial disclosure together and you're relying on your lawyer to do that, and it's not that we can't, but it's going to take longer and it's going to cost more, and then also knowing where you want to go and what you want to achieve. We're often asking that question, okay, so what do you want? What do you want? And so when people can't articulate that, everything takes longer. And so that's where we have cost blowouts or, things like that. So I think it's well worth getting that sort of assistance. And, you know, I guess the thing is that looking at how you move forward to rebuild is one of the most empowering parts of it. I mean, it's taking something negative and making it into a positive, I guess. So
yeah, because really, I mean, the financial disclosure, if you just read the document, right, any person who is probably not a trained accountant, you just feel like, oh my gosh, you know, there's just so much information. And I would say even accountants will be like, oh, you know, you don't really go into that much detail for everything. But like, yeah, you just realizing that, oh, you know, that you just overwhelmed before you even start.
yeah,
I think that's what most people face. And if you don't get clarity on your current position, then how are you going to move it forward, right? So I think really it's just guiding the clients. I take them through different modules. Like one session, we just look at the income. Maybe we just collate everything on the income side and talk with them on that bit, and then look at the expenses. So there's a structured way of, you know, tackling each bit of that disclosure document, and like an auditor, you know, filing everything. So it can be a proper set of documents provided to your legal advisor.
yeah.
And it'll be, and I'm sure you'll be happy with
Sounds
that,
like heaven.
right?
Yeah.
Sounds like heaven, right?
Yes.
And yeah, so, you know, really just looking at your current positions and then working out what you want, right? Because if you don't know what you want, then how are you going to come to some sort of conclusion for settlement? Like, how do you know that percentage is right for you? Because if you're missing out a lot of things, then, you know, your percentage allocated to you might be much lower, right? So, yeah, so I think doing that bit is really important.
And what about people that say they've been a stay-at-home mum and then they're going back to the workforce, or they're finding that during this process they're going to have to go back to the workforce?
Yeah.
Tell me about some of those clients. Have you had too many of those clients that you've had to assist?
Yeah, so for those clients, like, I mean, like I said, from a lending point of view, banks will always want to see what your income is. And there are different policies on, like you said, for a stay-at-home mum who's going back to work, probably on a casual role maybe. And yeah, we need to demonstrate some sort of length of employment. Some banks may consider even 3 months or 6 months, and that would kind of give you some sort of income to prove to the banks that, yeah, I have a stable enough income to be able to service a loan. So that would help, like, with that future borrowing capacity. But it's definitely a lot harder if you've not worked for a long period, unless, you know, you set up your own business and things like that. It's still possible, but it doesn't make it easier. But there are different lenders who will consider different things. Yeah.
So I mean, that makes it even more challenging for, you know, for women to go back and to rebuild. But what about superannuation?
Yeah. Superannuation in terms of the split?
Well, yeah, in terms of the split, or why is it important from a financial person's point of view?
Yeah. So definitely not giving financial advice.
No advice. No advice.
Yeah, but superannuation, you know, it's basically a fund that you can access, right, after you hit a certain retirement age, and any earnings from that withdrawals after that age, you know, is tax-free, correct? So, you know, the superannuation balance is so important because, you know, it's a retirement fund where basically you can't work anymore, and that money is there, and you can access it and be able to live off that money. And obviously that money will continue to be invested as well. But, you know, having that funds there is so important.
Because earlier you mentioned something about superannuation, and we touched on like the gender pay gap, and why, you know, women will often find that they're at a financial disadvantage because they haven't been earning superannuation perhaps while they took time off to have children, and then only worked part-time when they went back. So, and from my perspective, people will often go, oh no, I don't want to upset the super. That will make him angrier.
Okay. Yeah, because, I mean, the ATO actually releases statistics on, the super balances for different age brackets and by gender. So for women, the super balance is definitely a whole lot lower than the gents, unfortunately, like you said, from taking time off work and, going back part-time. So, yeah, and I think the gents realize that, the superannuation balance, right, is something for retirement, and the higher balance they have is definitely to their advantage. But I think it's something that you need to work out in for the women to justify why they need a certain amount of super balance, because women definitely outlive men.
Yes.
A lot of the time.
And so they need more.
Yeah, that's right. You probably need more. So, not having that balance to sustain them during retirement, it's putting themselves at a very disadvantageous position. So I think, I mean, you can't keep everyone happy, right? in a financial separation situation. But I mean, if it's fair for the women to, ask for more, I think you have to, because that's tax-free money that is there for you when you cannot work. So people look at it from maybe the current perspective, like, oh, maybe I can work for another 10 years or 20 years, but then after that, what happens? People don't think beyond that. And like you say, with medical technology, and women already live longer than men.
Yeah. So,
you need that much more balance to be able to have a sustainable lifestyle. I'm not talking about, buying supercars or going on boat trips or overseas holidays, but, working out basic needs on what you need, even in your older years. I think that's so important. Yeah. Especially for women. So if the men can't be happy, I'm sorry, but I think it needs to be fair.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is we need to be more informed.
That's right.
And need to know what our current position is.
Yeah.
And where we want to go.
That's right.
And is that the simplified version?
Yeah, the simplified version. And I think, women just need to understand, like I said, money, there are different aspects. Like you said, super. There's insurances. There's that, what they're earning, what they're spending, your asset pool, how you can continue to invest that. I mean, your super is if you're in a industry fund, your super is actually investing that money for you. That's why it's growing, not just from your contributions, but the fund is growing because the money is invested for you. So that's why I said, super is something you access later on. That investment thing is happening in the background. You don't see it, but it's so important. And even currently as well, it's just understand. You don't have to be an expert. That's why you've got advisors for different things. But having basic understanding of concepts of income, expenses, and basically your whole financial situation, and keep it simple. I like keeping it simple. I don't like to complicate things. So having that basic understanding, like you said, financial literacy. Literacy is something you learn, right? Right? We have to go to school to learn English, math, and other subjects. So financial literacy is the same. So as you understand basic concepts of finance terms, how it applies to you in real life. You're not talking about complicated financial products or instruments, derivatives, or things like that. But it's just basic concepts of understanding and how it applies to you in your life. And then with that, you can set proper goals for yourself and then work out, hey, I might not need that much, right? Yeah.
So if people want to get this sort of help, they can find you at Mum's Got Millions.
Yeah,
you have a website?
Right. Yes, I do. You can find me on mumsgotmillions.com.au. On Instagram. Everyone's on socials now.
Yeah.
Nowadays, so you can send me an email or through Kayte.
Yes, or you can contact through me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all of that information. And it's just great. I think it's a much needed aspect of. I know we're talking about family law, but it's bigger than that. It's bigger than that we all need to know where we're at and where we want to go financially, and to try and take some of the overwhelm out of it, which is what we're trying to do here at Voice in the Crowd. We're trying to take some of the mystery out of the legalities of some of these things that affect everyday people and the law.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. We hope you'll tune in next time. A quick but important note. What we're discussing in this podcast is general information only. It's not legal advice and it's not a substitute for getting advice tailored to your specific situation. The law, and family law and employment law particularly, are highly fact-specific. Small details can make a big difference. So if something we talk about resonates with you, we encourage you to get proper advice before taking any action. Nothing in this podcast creates a client-lawyer relationship, but we're always happy to point you in the right direction.